Jesus was the Messiah who failed. In fact, he was condemned for political reasons, and then his people managed to save his life. He was a warrior, certainly. In Luke it was written, Luke 23:32. Two criminals were also led to death with him. Today I came here by train. I had a coffee at a station, and there were also two train drivers in line with me. What do I do for a living? Does this say anything? If I say that there were two other train drivers in line with me, what do I do as a job? Who studied Greek? I do not question.
Eteroi.
Two other criminals. Not also two criminals. Other two criminals. That is, like him. Clear? In Greek it says eteroi. In Italian it says also, other. So much so that Judas, who gets that horde of people to go and arrest him, obtains a court from the Romans, 600 soldiers. That is the 10th part of a region. 600 soldiers, armed to the teeth, to fetch 12 follower children, who said, "If they give you a slap from here, let them give you there too." All the names with which they were identified were all the names of the Zealots. Bariona, which does not mean son of Jonah. Nazirio, which not until it means from Nazareth. Ishkariot. They were all names that identified the Zealots, that is, the cutthroats. Mithraism was a very dangerous person. In the Pistis Sophia, in the Gospel that speaks of Anna, in the Gospel of Mary, and in the Gospel of Thomas, Mary Magdalene is afraid of Peter. She feels threatened, and she was right. Meanwhile, you know that Jesus preached with his people. It is not clear, depending on the Synoptic Gospels or John the Counts, are completely different because they did not agree with each other, or a year or 3 years. In any case, whether it's a year or 3, they haven't done a day's work. Now, since then, if you didn't work, you didn't eat. How did they live? They lived as we say some gurus contemporary to us. They were supported by wealthy women who stayed with them day and night. And since these were bonagis, that is, the sons of thunder, and since one of these wealthy women was the wife of an administrator of Herod, and in the apocryphal Gospels, it is written that she abandoned the nuptial bed to join them here, and ill-kept with his possessions. In your opinion, what relationship was there, without inventing a lot? Because then, it happened that those who owned fields or cases sold them and brought the proceeds from the sales by putting them on the feet of the apostles. That is, the money was administered by all of the bosses. I repeat, the money was administered by all of the bosses. Acts of the Apostles, chapter 5. A couple of Ananias and Sapphira sells a good, but says, "You know what we do. We keep part of the money, which is better." Peter realizes this because, like all the leaders of the sects, he has everything under control. She calls her husband and says to him, "Ananias, why did Satan, who would be the adversary, fill your heart to seek this deception and keep part of the price of the camp? How could you have thought such a thing?" These words, Ananias fell to the ground dead. How do you think Ananias died? He's taken a hit, right? Immediately, some young people moved to wrap him up and take him to bury. About 3 hours later, his wife also showed up, without knowing what had happened. Pietro, with the most astute of police interrogation techniques, says to her, "Sapphira, tell me a little, but is that long since you sold the field?" And she replies, yes, it is for that price, saying what she had agreed with her husband. When Peter asks her the question to force her to tell falsehood and says, "But why did you agree? Here at the door are the steps of those who buried your husband. They will take you away too," and she dies. How do you think Sapphira dies? To be sorry, right? Or from laughing because he says, "I am finally left a widow." And the whole community was terrified. No one could think of reasoning with his own head, and everyone had to understand. Either do as we tell you, or it ends badly. And Mary Magdalene, in Prista Sophia, in the Gospel of Mary and in the Gospel of Thomas, says, "I feel threatened by Peter, because Peter could not bear that Mary Magdalene knew more things than he knew." And since Mary Magdalene was the companion of Jesus, it was obvious she knew more than he did. Do you know who it is that says that Peter killed them? Jerome. Before him, Porphyry says it. But Porphyry, let's not take it into consideration, because he was one who spoke against Christians. Jerome is the one who translated the Bible into Latin, and in the Epistole 109, in verse 5, clearly speaks of the severentias Petri necantis, Aninus, of the hardness of Peter killing Aninus. Then in Epistole 140, he tries to recover and says, it is Porphyry who says this. But there is no need for either Porphyry or Girolamo. Just read what is written here to understand who killed these two. The story is completely different from the one they told us. But we have to read these texts because otherwise we will let them tell us. How many times? When is the last time you went to church, son? Okay, don't tell me. Excuse me, but every now and then I have to. How to say, play down a little, because when a young boy shows up, Jesus, he says, "Jesus, what must I do to follow you?" "Keep all the commandments." But I did. And he makes a list of the commandments. Then Jesus, looking at him, said to him, "You still lack one thing. Go sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then follow me." Here it is written that if you respect, I say respect, because I am not a follower of the God of love, mind you, in the sense that I am free to choose to love and who not to. The followers of the God of love are not. They are obliged to love everyone. It is different. On the contrary, they are obliged to love above all those who hate very willingly. It is precisely those who must love. But I want to be free. I am not capable of hating, but I want to be free to choose. Then you still lack one thing. Go, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then follow me. How many times have they told you? A priest has told you. So this week, you sold everything? Did you give it to the poor? No, not this week. Then do it next week. Because it is written here. It's written here. It says, give it to the poor. Yes, that's right. Because the Ebionites are poor. That is them. So much so that all the goods sold had to be placed under the feet of the apostles. It's all written here. Go sell everything you have and bring it here for us to take care of. I do nothing else. I am reading Christian Family, not my translations. And one says, you invent things. No, it's here. And that is why I read these books, because it is enough to read what we have at home to understand, which does not mean that God does not exist. Attention, I do not know anything about God, so I never talk about it, because it is already difficult to talk about these books, about which little is known, let alone talk about something I know nothing about. So I never allow myself to say, God exists, God does not exist. How would I make such a statement, in one sense or another? How would I do it? I don't even know. I don't even feel that I have a pancreas if the anatomy doesn't tell me, let alone if I warn God. Yet I have a pancreas because otherwise, I guess, I would already be dead. But I don't feel it. Not even the spleen. I don't feel it, let alone if I feel God. I'm talking about me, then everyone, God forbid. This is just to say that I don't talk about those things because I don't know anything. I do not speak of the spiritual worlds because I do not know anything about them, and therefore I'm silent. I'll tell you what I read. This is my idiot job. Something we'll have to know about spirituality. Because you said earlier, true spirituality is not in religion, in the sense that it is not here for sure. Nothing. Okay? So then, when after Jesus was taken down from the cross, and the 11 are gathered together, the 11 were gathered, and Thomas, known as Didymus, was missing. Let's take an example. Let's get out of the Gospels. Let's say we know about 10 people. A football team like that, at least 11 people. This football team has a captain, who is the charismatic leader. That is, he really is above all the others. And they introduce us to this football team, and there are women there too. They say, so she is Francesca, she is Lucinia, Roberta, she is Anna, she is Maria, and she is the wife. Immediately, instinctively, whose wife do we think she is? Since we are not told about whom, period. Whose twin?
Quando Giuda si fa dare tutta quella gente per andarlo a prendere, dice quello che io bacerò dovete prendere.
That is not that one does. You take it and kiss it. So you are not mistaken, Mello. So you are not wrong. And if he was the son of Gabriel, since often when these intervened here, they produced twins, isn't it that a twin birth escaped with him too? It is a question, and obviously, I have no proof of what I am telling you. God forbid. But I am called to speak, and I will tell you my curiosities. Finished. After which, you do what you want with them, including throw them away immediately. And we will remain friends as before. Believe me, friends as before. There is no problem. I don't have to, like saying, bring other truths or create anything. Finished. See you today. Then we don't see each other anymore for the rest of my life. And as soon as I can, so to speak, I go back to cycling. So I tell you my curiosities. But they are curiosities that arise from what I read, thinking about it a little bit. Because otherwise, I am always there to listen to what others tell me. And then, when I go to read, I realize that what they tell them others does not correspond to what I read written. A curiosity. In the text of the Kabbalah, there are triangles, circles, invocations. In the same way, you gave us an interpretation with respect to the cherubim, motors, choirs of the angels. What do you see in these texts? Meanwhile, which Kabbalah? I don't know as much. There are at least 12 different from each other, in contrast to each other. I have seen many systems to call above all the angels. Yes, it occurred to me that they could be the same way as the transportations of technology, in some way, translated and reported here. In my opinion, the science of the Kabbalah, in short, of the various Kabbalah, is extremely concrete, and the instrument with which those who know keep hidden what must be reserved and cannot be said. In the sense that, if in the Middle Ages, the Jews had openly told certain things that are in the Bible, and above all certain things that are in the Talmud, they would have been exterminated immediately. And the best thing is to hide it under the mysticism, so that I who know, I know, and that you who do not know, do not understand anything. As well as the apocalypse, before anyone asks me the question, sooner or later it arrives. Was she going to do it? It is that we Elohim are used to reading minds. So, then the Apocalypse, in my opinion, is a text written in code for the nascent churches of the time, which has nothing to do with future prophecies. It was about them. Why then does man always like to think that he is living in the times of the end? Who knows why? For 2,000 years, men have said every now and then, "Here we are we there? Where? What? When?" But live quietly. First of all, by telling her that I congratulate her, because I don't want to say that she is a modern hero, but she is certainly a brave person. I have also found part of his writings in ancient texts, such as Philostrato, or in Apollonius of Tyana. I don't know if he knows them. He quoted Celsus. He is another author and talks about unconventional things, and Fabre, the Olivier, who wrote The Occult History of Religions, where he also speaks of Ram or Rama, who, leading the Aryans, one of the 5 races on earth, does not die, but is taken, and he says, "The gods have given me a task, and I complete it," and it literally says that it is picked up and rises without any of its followers seeing it. And finally, another is Julian the Apostate, who himself speaks of how Paul and Tarsus came. He was a native of Tarsus, and Tarsus was the capital of Mithraism, so there is also a link with the cult of the sun. I wanted to know if he knew these authors, or had heard of them anyway. Yes. Then I often happen to talk about Celsus. I happen to talk about Justin the martyr. I happen to write about Elidioro, and so on. Here we. I want to say that they are contents that in a certain period were very widespread then, with the Council of Nicaea, but above all, with the Edict of Theodosius. Certain things tended to make them disappear because they should not have been talked about. Now you have mentioned Apollonius of Tyana. Paul of Tarsus chose Jesus, but Apollonius of Tyana did the same thing he did. And therefore, we instead of being from Jesus Christ, Christians, we should be Apollonians. If Paul had chosen Apollonius of Tyana, we would be Apollonians. Same, exactly. Jesus experiences the Transfiguration, and he changes his appearance. Among other things, in the apocryphal Gospels, it is written that he was able to change his appearance. I do not know if it is true, however, as it is written. I tell you, Elijah and Moses introduced themselves to him. When you read the Bible, you will find that Elijah left with the Elohim, not because he was kidnapped, but he went voluntarily, that he is voluntarily with his disciples. With a few days of walking, he arrives in a place called Bethel, that is, the house of El, where those departed from there. Elijah gets on one of these chariots and goes away, and his disciples in the following days go to look for it, because they say, somewhere he will also have deposited it. So this gives us an idea of how concrete the scene was. If they go looking for him, it is because they saw him leave. Moses, when they arrive at the famous promised land, says, "I cannot enter there," and the Bible says, he was in perfect health. So, but he goes to die in the valleys of Moab, and goes to die accompanied by his 2 most faithful, Joshua and Eleazar. After which the 2 returned, and no one knows anything about him anymore. No one knows where his grave is. Josephus, who is a Jewish Roman historian who writes in the 1st century after Christ, he writes the whole Bible for the Romans, and when he talks about the story of Moses, he says that Moses just went to the valley of Moab, and when he was there, a cloud arrived, and it took him away. Now, cloud is the term with which in the Old Testament, many times the flying objects with which those move, there is identified, and, among other things, in the dictionaries of Hebrew etymology, such as the one published by the University of Haifa, Ana, the Hebrew word meaning cloud, means something that appears quickly to the eye and produces a continuous, subdued noise. Then a cloud arrives and takes it away, and Josephus writes a beautiful thing. Moses was forced to write that he was dead so that no one could say that he had gone away with the gods. And who is it that Jesus showed up during the Transfiguration? The two undead, Elijah and Moses, two who left with, in quotation marks, divinity. Curious, isn't it?